And we are live, or we should be. Hello, everyone. Let's see if it's working. I'm watching the screen to make sure that it is doing the thing that it's supposed to be doing.
I can see your pretty little face right over there in YouTube, so I'm going to say it's working.
Yay, it's working. Hey, guys. How are you guys doing? I hope that you're amazing. Let's wait for some people to jump in. We'll know when people stop saying hi. There's Robert. Hi, Robert. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Hi, Priscilla. Are you guys excited? Hey, Trish. How are you?
Oh, he just got into the, I have the laundry hamper, like I have the laundry basket on the floor. He just fell into the basket.
Well, he's adorable.
I'm watching my dog try and bury his treat in the laundry basket. Now he's stuck in there.
He's like, that's where it goes, Mom. Duh.
Come here.
Trish, so tired, but did not want to miss this. I'm so glad that you stayed up to join us. Victoria, do you want to say hi to everyone?
Hello, everyone.
We have Victoria Gilbert here. She wrote the book that we read on last month. Yes, A Murder for the Books. She wrote the first, or she wrote all of them, not just.
I was gonna say I can see the cover in the background of your office.
Yes.
I love the cover. I've been like holding this up over on Instagram forever. So that was one of the first things I saw when your camera popped on. I was going, I
have it. Yes, as you see, there's a bigger picture.
Did you make that, or was this like
I had it done Vistaprint? Yeah, I just sent a picture in.
Oh, I love Vistaprint. That is so awesome. So hello.
Yeah, I brought my books too. So I have 1, 2. No, that's the last one. 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, I'm so excited. I know that Angela, you're going to do a read along for the second book.
Yes. So if you have not read the second book in this series and you want to get ready for the third one, which just came out yesterday, so there's a buddy read. Let me know. DM me on either Twitter, Instagram, whatever. I know for sure that there are 3 people interested. So once we kind of like figure out who's interested and what your schedule is, we are going to be buddy reading the second book of the series. I am so excited. I was really tempted to start it without you guys, just FYI. I was holding back to be like a part of the Cozy Mystery Companion group. I had to like stop myself and be like, no, I said I was going to buddy read this. I'm going to buddy read this. So if you want to read the second book along with me, just let me know.
Yeah. Oh, I see Robert. He's like, I want to be part of the read along. Yay! More people. Of course, like I was a Cheaty McCheaterson, and when I finished the book for book club, I immediately bought the second book and read it like back to back. And then I was super sad because it was like third one's not out yet. I was like, fine, I'm pre-ordering it.
I pre-ordered the third one. I was like, I haven't even read the second one, but like, I don't even care. I'm already pre-ordering the third one.
Yeah.
I was like, I love the first one that much. I was like, I don't even need to know what happens in the second one to know I want to read the third one.
And I think there's going to be books 4 and 5. My publisher has signed me up for 4 and 5, which actually I just finished writing book 4. So I'm not sure. They haven't given me the date when it comes out, when it's supposed to come out yet. It's usually about, when I turn it in, it takes about 9 months or so. So I would say the end of this year.
Awesome. I love it.
So
we're gonna have to do a buddy read for that one too. We're gonna have to figure out what's going on. We're just gonna have to like figure out like when can we read this book, because it's gonna happen.
Yes. And then I have a new series. So in between writing book 4 and writing book 5, I have to write book 1 of my new series. And
do you want to say a little bit more about your new series?
Yeah, it's set in a small town, a coastal town in North Carolina. It's called Beaufort, North Carolina. I don't know if people know that town, but it dates very far back in history. It was settled in the 1700s, and it has a whole history of pirates and all kinds of exciting things. They're involved with the Revolutionary War, of course, Civil War. So there's a lot of history and interesting things going on there. And it's this wonderful old town with beautiful homes. So my book is about a lady who is a widow, and she inherits a bed and breakfast, and she is running this bed and breakfast, and it's a literary bed and breakfast. So they have special literary events. And in book 1, they're going to be celebrating mystery author Josephine Tay, who I love. And so they're sponsoring weekends. And so then the murder happens during this whole murder mystery weekend. So that's the new one.
I love how I'm creating this right now. I'm like, I want this.
Yes. Like my master's is in American Studies, and so like you were like American Revolution, Civil War. I was just like, yes, please. Like, give me some more of that. That sounds fantastic.
Well, I mean, I really liked how you worked in the historical elements in this book. So you're speaking to my reading heart over here when you're saying you're doing something similar in the other series. I'm going, okay, I love that in this one, so I'm probably going to love it in the other one.
Yeah.
Actually, it's in all of them. One aspect of the Blue Ridge series that I decided early on was that I was always going to include some historical elements that tie into the contemporary murders and investigations. And that was easy too, because the setting is based on where I grew up, which is a very historic area. It is Taylorsford in my books is sort of an amalgam of all the little towns I knew growing up in Northern Virginia. I grew up in a small town in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And so I didn't make it one town there, but it's a combination of several towns.
We have a question over here. I just saw this. Francis Black wants to know, if you were to stay over in the B&B, which author's room would you stay in?
Oh, okay. Probably Josephine Tay. She's one of my favorite mystery authors. I just love, from the golden age anyway, from the older writers. She has such great psychological depth to her books, along with the wonderful mysteries. And so you really feel like, you know, she's developed those characters in a way that is not always the case in some, you know, where the clues are the most important thing. But in her books, it's the clues, but it's also the murder mystery characters. And one of her famous books is called The Daughter of Time. And it actually involves the inspector going back and reading and studying and figuring out Richard III, did he or did he not kill the princes in the tower? And so it's just really fascinating.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I loved about reading the first book in your series, when it sort of felt like the town became a character in and of itself. And I loved the fact that the history was part of the mystery as well. Like everything was intertwined, and that's what made it so easy for me to just fall into all of it. I loved that aspect.
And I was going to say, there is a lot of love in the comment section talking about your books. The people are like, I want to read this. Everyone is so excited. This is just so sweet to see. Trish is excited. Nikki's excited. The 100 Bookworm is excited. Lisa was saying she loves small town cozy. So everyone's like right on board with this. Like, we are here.
Yes. All of your fans are here, and they are wanting more.
Well, as I said, I just finished book 4 in the series. Yes. So, there will be 5. At least 5. We'll see what happens after that. That's, you know, publishing, they have to see how things go before they can say how many books you're going to get. But
how much everything's eating them up. Well, if we have any say about it, you're going to be, you know, right for a while.
Yeah, so you can tell Crooked Lane Books, that's my publisher who I love, but just let them know you like them.
So we've got another question by Francis Black. Any movies planned? Because I know that Hallmark does they do movies and mysteries. And so do you have any like inkling or maybe even a want to have it in the big picture?
Well, actually, Sony Pictures Television has optioned the first 2 books in this series. And we don't know what will happen with that because an option is just an option, but you know, you don't know whether anything will come of it, but there is that possibility.
That is so exciting.
That just I'm so happy right now.
I mean, I'm just kind of like blown away. Like as soon as you said that, I was like, this is amazing.
Yes.
Like, can we start a petition to like make sure that this actually happens?
Yeah. Just be like, yes, please, please, pretty please.
And of course, I sit around thinking, now who could play Richard?
Richard and Amy's just relationship and dynamic, I loved that you didn't make it an insta love, because that, like, sometimes you're like, okay, insta love, like that happens, but it was just so pure, and just, I just love just all of it, and the way that he told her to go and, you know, look at the video, and just like, oh, it would, I don't know, it made my heart so happy.
You're gonna like the end of book 3 then.
I'm so excited. I'm like 3 chapters in.
I mean, I'm excited that he was a dancer because, again, I've read a lot of romance narratives, and I see a lot of like the CEOs or a construction worker. I think he's probably the first male dancer I've encountered in like a romance narrative. It was just so different. I love that you made him a dancer. And we were talking a little off air about how you were interested in dance, but I'm just curious, like, what made you make your romantic lead a dancer?
Well, I think, as I told you all earlier, I was the library director for a performing arts college, and it was performing and visual arts, and we had a large dance department. And actually, I also worked in New York at the Lincoln Center Performing Arts Library. So while I was there, I had a good friend who introduced me to a lot of dance. I'd always liked dance, but she really got me into it. We went to see so many performances of brilliant companies and dancers. And I have just always admired, I mean, I'm a terrible dancer myself. I'm just not good. But I admire dancers so much because they have such dedication, and it's really an athletic art form that requires both emotional expression as well as physical expression. And so I just felt like I wanted that kind of a man as the main love interest. I wanted someone who wasn't the cop and the PI and the tough guy, because I think sometimes we stereotype men as much as we stereotype women, and you can't be this or that. You have to fit this mold. And so I like to break molds a little bit.
I was gonna say,
yeah, I feel like you really, it felt like a different type of cozy, which is what we talked about when we got together with our live stream, that it felt more like literary, like, I don't know. It was just, I loved that he was a main character as well. He wasn't just the side character that, makes her heart do palpitations, but isn't much good for anything else. Like, I loved that it was like a team and a duo, and it really, really worked together.
Yeah, I've always loved that whole concept of, I guess it's sort of a Scooby gang, but the idea in books, even in Lord of the Rings, when you have the fellowship, and I just love the idea of
Gimli over there in my heart.
I love the idea of friends, not just, that people have all these relationships and you can really love someone and it's not necessarily romantic, and that you have close friends and that you have family. And to me, that's just interesting. So I like to bring that in, like bringing in Sunny as the best friend.
I love Sunny so much.
And that she, and one of the things I'm really, really determined to always do is portray good female relationships, because I feel like a lot of times in the media, TV and books, sometimes there's women pitted against each other, and I don't want to portray that. I mean, it happens, and there might be instances where it's the antagonist or something, but I like to see, my experience in life has been that I get along with women, I like women, they're my friends,
Mm-hmm.
I want to see that. So
exactly.
I was going to say, you have a couple more questions over here. So Robert asked this over on Twitter, but he asked it again here. What is your current favorite book, and what's your childhood favorite book?
oh my goodness, I've read so much. It's really hard to tell you that. I can tell you my current favorite book. In fact, if you hold on one second, I'll get it.
Yeah. We're all about adding more books to our TBR pile.
This is a very different book. This is not a mystery. This is called Ka, and it is by John Crowley. And he actually signed it for me because I went to hear him speak. So he's one of my favorite authors. He writes literary fantasy.
Ooh,
And it's very, very thought-provoking and beautifully written. He wrote a book that I loved, I always loved. It's called Little Big. And if you like anything to do with fairies, you need to read Little Big. It's a whole different take. It's nothing like anybody else does, and it's just amazing. He also brings in Shakespeare into that book, so it's just an amazing book.
yeah.
Oh, good night, Trish. Thank you for joining us. I saw Trish was leaving us. So sad.
But childhood books, I mean, I just loved everything. I read everything I could get my hands on. So I read so much that people didn't believe I could read that much. I was always being questioned by my teachers. You can't possibly read that many books.
That makes me so mad as a teacher. Like, negative. No, you don't get to tell someone that they did not read. Oh.
I was going to say, were you finding these books at your library? Like, how did you find your childhood reads?
Well, we didn't have a library in my town at that time. They do now, but in my hometown. But my parents, bless them, always made sure I had books. They would drive me to libraries in neighboring towns. They would take me every week to get stacks of books. And there was a wonderful librarian at this small library who would bring in books from other libraries for me. And so, I mean, it was like everybody was helping me out get books.
Homework.
Yeah.
You were never going to not have something to read. I love it.
Yeah.
We have another question by Lady Gizmo. She goes, how did you form a relationship with your publisher, and what made you decide to work with them?
Well, first of all, I have a wonderful agent, and she put me in touch with the publisher. I mean, we submitted this book around to different publishers, and Crooked Lane Books offered on it, as well as another publisher had offered on it too. But we just liked what they had to offer in terms of, you look at the books that they've put out and the people they're working with and the editors that they have, and you just make that decision based on that kind of research.
Yeah. I have another, Nikki has a question. So earlier you were talking about, how quickly you're writing these books and things like that, but she wants to know, do you ever get writer's block?
Not really. I get stuck sometimes when I'm in the middle of a book, and I usually find that it's because I'm going in the wrong direction. So when I start to realize I don't want to write this, or this just doesn't feel right. In fact, in the last book, the book 4, I had to go back and revise it a couple of times from the beginning and change some major things because I could feel it not going in the right direction. And it just didn't, it felt like I was pulling teeth to try to write chapters. So I thought, there's something wrong here. So I had to go back and look at my outline, look at what I'd written, and rework it to try to get it to a point where it worked.
So we had a question over on Twitter with Nicole, aka who picked this book. I love her. She's my best friend. I love her. I just want to shout out. So she asked, over this, dovetailing off of that, she asked, what's your typical writing day look like? So I think that's actually a really relevant question to what you were just alluding to.
Yeah. Well, it depends on where I am in the process. But usually I'll get up and do some chores and things because I'm working from home now. So because I am retired, luckily. And I'll do that, maybe take a walk, but then I have to sit down and just for a stretch of time do a lot of writing. I do better sort of mid-morning into mid-afternoon in terms of being able to concentrate. And then in the evening, I try to spend time with my family. So I work it in the daytime. I have to really sit down. Yeah, right.
Do you have to have, like, is there a ritual you have? I know, like, some people are like, oh, I have to have a candle. I have to have my cup of coffee or tea. Like,
No. I'm pretty laid back when it comes to that sort of thing. I do have to be alone. I know a lot of people write in coffee shops or they write somewhere out in the public. I cannot do it. I just can't. I don't know why. It just feels too personal. It's like I get really involved in the story. And also, I've joked with other authors, but it's true. Sometimes when you're trying to write a scene and you'll start acting it out because you have to think, well, if he was standing over there and he put his arm here, would that actually work? So you'll see people doing things like, could she really turn around and do that?
Writing choreography, you do dance.
Yeah.
Just only during writing.
Yeah. Because it's, I mean, sometimes you still do it wrong, and then my wonderful editor will go, wasn't he standing across the room? He must have really long arms.
At least your editor has a really good sense of humor and is very easy.
Yeah. And we were talking a little earlier, speaking of editing, about that process.
Yes.
And I just wanted to share with people because I don't think people realize sometimes how important editors are. In my first book, A Murder for the Books, when we sold the book, it was in pretty good shape. But when my editor got a hold of it, she said, well, this is fine, but I really feel like we need another red herring. We need another suspect. We need another character. So could you add a character? Now, understand, the book is done. So adding a character means not just throwing a character in one chapter or two chapters. It means threading the character through the entire book. So that was a challenge, but she was right. And the character that I added was Kurt Kendrick, who now is one of my favorite characters. I love him. And so, it was brilliant suggestion. And I just like to let people know that it's a team effort sometimes when you're working on books. Your agent, your editor, your publisher, there's a lot of people working to get that book together.
Yeah, to get the world in his hands.
Yeah.
There's another question here. What would you do if you couldn't write anymore?
Oh, well, I don't know how that would happen other than, I developed aphasia or something. But I think, I've done a lot of different things in my life. And I didn't start writing professionally until I was in my late 50s.
Why did you start writing professionally?
Life happened, and I was working. I, at one point, was a single mother for a while. So I was working and taking care of my son. And my jobs were very demanding. Being a library director of a university and other things can be very time consuming. So, I always wanted to write a book, and then I just put it off and put it off. And finally one day, and I must say I have a very supportive husband too, because he was like, go do it. And he's one of my biggest fans too, which is great. But I said, I'm just going to write something just to prove that I can write a book. And that was, let's see, what is that now? 7 years ago. And since then I've written, although they're not all published, but I've written 9 books. So, once I got started, I really moved on that. But
was this for NaNoWriMo? Like, that is a lot of writing.
No, I never have done NaNoWriMo. No, I just started writing, and I don't know, it just became something that I realized I could do. And I think that was it too. I was not secure about, could I actually do this? And when I actually wrote the first book, which is not published now because it shouldn't be, but that was a learning experience, but I finished it, and that was the biggest thing. It's like, yes, you can do it.
So what do you think of people? So like me, I have started a cozy mystery from all of my love of cozies. Like every book behind me is a cozy. I started one on my own, but I have just, I don't know if I just don't have faith that I write well, or what do you give someone who, what do you tell amateur writers or writers who are, I don't know, experiencing not so good like emotions about their writing?
That was one of my questions. I wrote down like, what advice you have for aspiring cozy mystery writers?
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you that despite having written a number of books, I still have those moments when I don't think I can write worth a darn. And the truth is that the thing that I learned in writing the first couple of books was that whatever you write, you can revise. And so the pressure to get it right the first time is something we put on ourselves, but it's not necessary. I mean, if you get the ideas out there and you say, I'm finished this book, you can go back and do a lot of work on it to get it to where you want it to be. And I think a lot of people stop because they feel like, well, it's not good enough yet. And it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be good enough yet. It's probably good. It's just that we all can get better. In fact, when I turn in these books, like I was talking about giving it to my editor, I know I'm going to get notes back. I'm going to get notes back. They're going to be good notes, and I'm going to revise things, maybe dramatically, and it'll be a lot better. So I think, yeah.
You said you had 2 partners. So I'm kind of curious, like how you got in touch with them, or how you kind of cultivated this partner relationship.
I met them on a website that was for writers called Agent Query Connect, and AQC. It's not as active right now, although it's still up. But at the time I was writing fantasy and science fiction, and I met them in talking with in some of the forums. And we just had similar kinds of takes on how you critique things, and so we shared some chapters and realized that we could work together. And one of them actually writes fantasy and young adult fantasy. She just had a book published in the summer, and that's Lindsay Duga. It's Kiss of the Royal. It's a great little fantasy.
Ooh, that reminds me of The Highlander by Karen Marie Mounting.
Yeah. And the other is Richard Pierson, and Richard Taylor Pierson is his author name. He wrote a book called The Role about a Broadway actor. He is a former actor. He's also a lawyer and a writer. And his book was published a couple of years ago, and he's working on some other things too. He writes LGBTQ books. So it's a really different thing. And all 3 of us share these books, and you know, we just work together.
I love that. And do some of your thoughts sort of show up in each other's work? Like I loved sort of like the ghosty kind of vibe I got in the first book. I was like, like all of the things that I love in cozies just like sort of like melded into one place, and I was so excited.
Yeah, I along with the history, I wanted to bring in, I've always loved speculative fiction. I love what if. What's my favorite thing is what if. And my husband and son and I watch a lot of shows that are scientifically based, but they're talking about, you know, possible things that could happen, or mysteries around the world. And so I wanted to add in a touch of that. But because I was raised by a scientist, my father was a virologist. And in fact, we have a lot of scientists in my family. I'm the outlier, you know, I'm the weird one. So I'm very skeptical too. I have this weird thing. I'm like Amy in that, that I sort of see things and I think, well, maybe, but then the logical part of my brain kicks in and I go, oh no, you know, That's not logical.
Your logical point, your logical part, and she's just like, no.
Yeah.
I think I was like doing that reading the first book. When I was reading this, and it wasn't until the very end with the ghost where I was like, oh, there were those little crumbs along the way, but like I didn't instinctively think ghosts. It was like right at the end where I was like, oh, wait a second, this is what's happening. It was kind of a surprise.
I'm hoping that there's going to be ghosts and like cozy companion like cats and dogs, like that and food. Like that is those are my like if all of those like go together, I'm like, oh. Yes.
There is a cat in book 3. Book 3, I added a cat.
I haven't gotten there yet. I'm so excited.
And actually in book 4, there's another cat. So there's going to be 2 cats eventually. But yeah, I added cats. But I always am going to have that little thing along with the history where it's up to the reader. I love those kind of books. One of my favorite stories of all time is Henry James' Turn of the Screw. And one of the reasons I love it so much is because you can read it and I can read it and somebody else can read it. And we all have a different interpretation and they're all right. And I think that's the most brilliant. I mean, I can't write to that level, but I mean, I'm just amazed by the fact that when a book can present possibilities and allow the reader to imagine things and have their own ideas, because I think part of the reading experience is the reader engaging, and it's not just the author saying, here's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I love that. Because you have the book, there's so many different narratives interweaving, because you have the old cozy mystery, then you have the modern day cozy mystery, then you have the romance, then you have the supernatural. I mean, how do you strike that balance as a writer to incorporate all those what ifs and have all those little trails for the readers? I mean, do you plot this? Do you like know?
Oh yes.
The book?
I have to plot a lot. With mysteries, I think that's almost essential. I do pretty detailed outlines and synopsis, but I allow myself also to change things as I write. So it's not fixed in stone, like here's the plot and it can't deviate from it. Because sometimes things happen, or you know, with the Kurt character, when he was added, he changed the whole dynamic. So you have to be flexible in that way. But in terms of the dropping the clues and weaving things in, it has to be, and maybe that's where it's good to have a logical mind, because you have to work it out like a puzzle, and try to make it work so that everything you're saying ties in some point in the future. You know, it's not just throwaway. It's like there's a reason why you say certain things or do certain things.
And I love that everything ties together, that there is no superfluous thing. Like everything matters. And so, because there are some times where you can read like a book and you can skim the whole entire like 2 or 3 pages. Like if you're just like, oh my gosh, this keeps going on, and those pages did not even matter to the plot, didn't matter to the character development, didn't matter to any of that. But then there's other ones, like books I've read, like Name of the Wind. I tried to speed read through one paragraph and I was completely lost. And when I went back, I died in that paragraph and I sobbed for like 3 hours after that, just that one paragraph. And it's amazing how authors have that ability to just make or break you, and it's just great.
Yeah, I mean, there are people I really admire, and I have no idea how in the world they do what they do. One person, well, she's no longer with us, but Dorothy Dunnett. She's another one of my favorite authors. She writes she wrote historical fiction. It's swashbuckling, it's exciting, it's just amazing. And there's the first, it's called the Lyman Chronicles, but there's a 6-book series. And I have read it several times. And it's just amazing. She weaves in real history from back in the time of Queen Elizabeth and all that time period.
That's awesome.
But yet it's just all these characters, and They travel to Russia. They do. I mean, it's just an amazing series. But the woman had to have had an IQ of, I don't know, 300 or something, because I don't know how anybody could have all that interwoven in that real history, and the, you know, everything is just amazing. So I highly recommend those books too.
So we've got a question that says, you're writing so many books. Is that because you're contracted to produce a certain amount, or are you just a prolific writer, which makes your publisher very happy?
Well, I am contracted to write a certain amount. I am fortunate in being able to write fairly quickly. You know, I am on tight deadlines, so it's good that I can do that, and I don't feel totally panicked. I mean, I've actually worked out my whole year's worth of writing for this year. With I have to write. I just finished book 4. I have to write book 1 and book 5 and start book 2 of the new series this year. So I'm writing a lot. But what I do is I actually take a calendar. I'm a really organized person. I'm a librarian. What can I say? And so I have a calendar, and I say, you have to. These are the chapter points you have to reach. If you do this, you'll hit your mark. And so it's not impossible. It's just you can't fool around for weeks on end, because then it won't happen.
Yeah. So do you go by, you mentioned the plot points. So do you go by like what you need to write in the story, or do you go by word count? Like, how do you kind of figure out within that day, like what your aim is?
I actually found that for some strange reason, my chapters tend to be about 10 pages long, give or take. Some are 10 to 12 or 13. So I find it easier because of the beats of the, I studied theater too, so I really have this feeling of wanting to have the rise and fall like in a scene.
Mm-hmm.
So the chapters to me feel like scenes, and they have to have a certain momentum, and you also want to intersperse, like, here's a really active one with the next chapter, which might be a quieter one, and that sort of thing. So I just find I break it down by chapter. Like, I need to write 2 chapters a week, basically, to get certain.
I actually like that idea. Instead of saying like a word count, I really like that, because it kind of gives you more of a tangible goal in a certain way. Because instead of saying like an abstract number of words, you're like, I want to get this point written. I'm sitting over here like, I like this idea. Let this percolate.
Yeah. I really like the idea of having yourself a goal that's attainable, because I started writing during NaNoWriMo, and so I'm like trying to like get to that 50,000 goal, and I think that's one of the things that overwhelmed me the most. I had a really good outline. It was like on my word count, it was like a $6,000 word outline of just the book, and I hadn't even started like actually physically writing it yet, and I was already overwhelmed by, oh, I've got to have this many words by this many times, and it was just, I like that.
I feel like that's why I've never done nano, because I feel it's very artificial, and I like setting goals. And the other thing with the chapters, as you were saying, it feels more like, again, I go back to the scene. Like, I can build a scene up and then, you know, sort of end the scene where I want. And that's kind of like a mini, it's like an episode or something.
Comparison that it's an episode.
Yeah. You know, so, you know, if you were doing TV or something, it would be an episode. And it gives you something to feel like you've done that completed thing. As opposed to, well, here's so many words I'm cutting off here, even though, you know, it's the middle of the chapter or whatever. I don't know. That just doesn't work for me. I like to do it in chapters.
I was gonna say, have you written a blog article or something on this?
I haven't at all.
Yeah, you might put that, like, maybe some like the author's corner, or like thoughts on writing on your website would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
I would certainly read that, or maybe like a newsletter, like, hey, here's some stuff.
I do have a newsletter, but it's more about, you know, here's what's happening, and I actually put a thing in about come join us for the interview. But yeah, I've thought about doing that on the blog. It's sometimes it's hard because you also get caught up in trying to feel like you're doing all the social media and the blogs and the this and the that. And with the writing deadline, you have to juggle that.
Yeah, we've got another question. Lady Gizmo says, just curious, is Victoria Gilbert your real name or a pen name? And how did you decide to use which one to use?
It's a pen name. I'm not shy about the fact that I have another name. I wrote my first books under my real name, which is Vicki Weevil, Vicki L. Weevil. And you will see that listed on my Twitter profile as well. I decided, well, two things. When I switched genres, my agent and publishers felt like it was better to have a pen name for a different genre, such a different genre, because it's not like, well, I wrote sci-fi and then I wrote fantasy or something. It's very, very different. So at that point, I decided I wanted Victoria because my actual name is Vicky. On my birth certificate, I'm not Victoria, I'm Vicky. The ICKI, that's it. But with the pen name Victoria, it allowed people to call me Vicky. Say, you know, when you go to conferences and things, I can say, oh, just call me Vicky. So that makes it easier for me. And Gilbert is my husband's middle name. So the process, part of it was looking at authors' names on, you know, author sites and Amazon and Barnes and Noble and everywhere to make sure there weren't a million people with that name. So that eliminated a lot of name choices. Fortunately, there were not a lot of Victoria Gilberts, so that was the one I went with.
Nikki asks, are there any song recommendations for your series? She usually likes to listen to music while reading.
Actually, I have done some playlists on some blog posts for my blog tours. So maybe I'll put that up on my website.
Yeah, and you can send the links to our Twitter chat, and I can link them down below on the YouTube video, because what happens with our live streams is that tons of people go back and watch all of them, and so we normally get a couple of hundred views on our live streams. So you can always send us the links, and we can put them down below as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I can send them to you.
Yeah, and then you mentioned before that we had another question from Lily Loving. I think you said this was on your YouTube video. She wanted to know what clues help you figure out who the killer is. She wanted to know, like, what are you leaving as your breadcrumbs? How do you figure out the murderer? Like, do you give any hints or?
Well, you have to. It's a really tricky balancing act, actually. And apparently I don't always do it perfectly, because I've had a few reviewers say, well, I guessed it too fast, but whatever, you know. You know, you're going to get that stuff. But trying to put clues in and without having a big neon sign over the perpetrator's head is really hard. I think that's one of the hardest things to do, to leave enough clues so that at the end, the person, you can look back and go, well, yeah, okay, I see where that came from. Because you don't want to get to the end and say, oh, here's the villain. And you're going, wait a minute, where did they come from? But again, you don't want it to look so obvious early on. And that's the tricky part. I mean, it's very hard. I don't always think I do it perfectly. I'm still learning that part. But
well, I didn't know who it was. I didn't know, so I don't know. Like, I didn't know who was going on.
I was like, oh. But then, like, going back, I was like, oh, that makes sense. And that's the thing with, like, I don't know about you, Angela, but with me, with reading so many cozies, I mean, I've read hundreds of cozies now. I'm pretty darn good at catching who the murderer is, like, super quick. And so I get really, 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 like, thrilled when I'm caught off guard, or like I can't figure it out until the sleuth figures out the whodunit. And then I'm like, oh, touche. Good job, author. You got me. And
I'm right there with you, because like sometimes I kind of either I figure it out or there aren't any clues, and I'm like, I'm just gonna see where this goes, whatever. Whereas like this one, I'm like, oh, I gotta figure out, like I need to find out what's happening. I need to know what's going on. Like I read this in one sitting. I was really just invested. I mean, sometimes they're like, yes, here's your stranger who's coming to the small town, and he's not, you're not gonna realize it's him.
The author questions the intelligence of the reader. Mm-hmm. It's like they assume, some authors, I don't think they do it intentionally, but some authors are like, I don't think my readers are as smart. And so then they put things that are blatant, and like I figure out by, chapter 2 who the killer's going to be, and it sort of takes the fun out of it. And I'm like, guys, I'm more like, we're more intelligent than you think. Please make it a little bit more difficult.
I mean, I also really like that she was sleuthing in your book, because we had one book for our club where like everything just kind of fell into her lap. Like I love how that she was an active character, and so we actually got to like follow along with her thought process, what her motivations were. So I was really intrigued by her sleuthing abilities.
Yeah, and that's library sleuthing mostly, and librarians are good sleuths, by the way. Yeah, my husband always says, you always find these things out about, like searching and trying to find things. And it's because I've been trained to do it. Mm-hmm. And it's, the way that your thought process works to help someone in the library, in a sense, is the way you would work through clues or try to figure out something, because you have to look at every angle. And that's one of the things we were taught in library school, and I really learned was true, is that too many people will come at something, if they're looking for information, they just want one answer. There is no one answer most of the time. You have to pull in all this stuff and then try to extrapolate an answer from everything that you've found. So that's what I try to have Amy doing, is that she gets a lot of facts together and then she has to try to think it through, like what makes sense.
I love it. Love that.
I love how you're writing what you know. And I didn't know anything about you before I read this book. And right away I was like, she knows what she's talking about when she's talking about the library. And then as soon as you said that's what you did, I'm like, that completely makes sense to me. I mean, sometimes you get the books where you're going, you get these little, you're not getting the details, whereas you just had them all spot on. I like that you incorporated like your knowledge, because that made it just so much more realistic.
I agree more.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I don't want to write something that I feel completely alien to. I know I can do research, but I have to feel some connection that I can bring something to it personally. And maybe that isn't my knowledge. Maybe it's the way I look at the world or whatever, but I don't want to write something that feels like I have no connection to the piece. And so there's a lot, and people sometimes say, well, they brought their political views in or whatever. And I'm like, of course you did. That's what writers do. I'm always going to do that.
That's one of the reasons why people read so much, is they want to constantly grow, and they want to constantly, be filled with knowledge. And that's why I love reading so much. And I think that's why a lot of people read so much.
I actually consider this book rather progressive for the cozy mystery genre. I mean, again, like I kind of love the fact that you were talking about, like, she had the gay brother and he might adopt, and then she was talking about living with the boyfriend. I think, a lot of cozy mysteries tend to be very traditional, and I kind of really appreciate the fact that this one wasn't in that way.
Yes, very much so.
Well, I'm 62, okay, and I use bad words. Now, I don't put them in my books because, or not much anyway. But I think about myself and what was my background. I grew up in a time period that was at the end of the hippie generation. I saw lots of drugs. I saw lots of stuff in the theater when I was working in the theater. So I look at myself and I think, I'm not this, at my age, I'm not some sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Really staid, uptight person. So I just try to depict people that I know, and I think about, my mother is 88 years old, and my mother, she's a wild woman sometimes, and there's a lot of fun people out there, and it's not about age. I think this whole idea that you have to have everything all buttoned up and be like we're still in the Victorian era or something.
I couldn't agree more. I love that. We do have another question by Nikki. She says it's a fun question. If you could have dinner and talk with 5 people, who would they be, alive or not?
Oh my goodness. Okay. 5 people. Well, I would love to talk with C.S. Lewis. Because I love his work, and I love his whole philosophy.
Right there, you're speaking to my heart right now.
Gosh, I have to think. My brain goes blank when I hear these. I think I would love to talk with Oscar Wilde, because he was the most witty, interesting people. I would have. And these are all people who have passed, aren't they? Oh, Michelle Obama, she'd be fun. And let's see. 2 more. Okay.
I like how
David Bowie. My husband loves David Bowie, and I think he would have been. I'm thinking of people who, if you were talking with them, have so much to bring to the conversation, and who would be so interesting. So one more. Okay. Emily Dickinson. So it's wide ranging. What can I say?
I could just picture that table and all the things that would be talked about.
I was gonna say, when you're sitting down to write your next book, this would be like a great dream montage. I'd be very invested in that.
I would love to see David Bowie give Amy some love advice.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, as soon as you said Emily Dickinson and C.S. Lewis, I'm like, yes. And then, Oscar Wilde. I can totally see you have a love of literature in you.
Very much so.
Oh, yeah. And I like people who love to play with thoughts and ideas and experiment, and really let their minds range widely, and are open-minded. So I think that would be fun.
We've got a couple more questions. Lady Gizmo says, if you read Amazon or Goodreads reviews, do they ever sway you in the direction or planning of newer books in order to please your audience? And have reviews ever influenced your writing?
Well, I learned over time that it's best not to read them. Now, we do get trade reviews, and my publisher shares those, and that's important. And I do read the reviews, like when I'm doing a blog tour where someone has taken the time to write a review, and I'll definitely read that. I don't tend to go to Goodreads to read reviews. Occasionally someone will point something out to me and say, oh, well, this is a good one, you should read this one. Mainly because, in all honesty, it's nothing against people's opinions, but for every one person who likes something done a certain way, if you like history blended in, I've seen reviews, because I have seen a few, that says, I wish they hadn't gone off on that tangent about history. So you really can't
Please
write to that. You can't. It's impossible. Because there's a lot of people. There's people who said they didn't like the fact that my books were a little more progressive. They didn't like the gay characters or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's fine, but I can't let that determine what I write. That's just not, it'll get in your head, and it is bad, because when I first started writing, I did read some 1-star reviews on my first books, and I was like, complete with gifts and everything, where the horrible, like ranting, raging thing. And I knew that I had gotten to a point of being a little bit more professional when I started laughing when I was reading some of them, because they were funny. But they can be painful. I mean, reviews can be very painful, and make you question yourself. But more and more as I look at things, I realize that you cannot please everyone. So if you're doing something and it's working for a lot of people, I think you have to stick with that, and not worry about the people who don't like it, because that's their opinion and they're entitled to it. But, you know.
Yeah, nobody can make everyone happy, and that's
No.
100% correct.
I was gonna say that's like a very healthy mentality for a writer, though.
Yeah, well, I'm not always healthy. I mean, I'll fall into my depths of despair, like, oh, I can't write anything. Ah. My husband would tell you this. I mean, he's the one who has to deal with it, you know. But it's a process, and I think everybody questions themselves, unless they're really deluded.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's going to question them.
Yeah. We have another question by Latasha. Latasha's Book World. She says, where can we find or get signed copies of your books?
Ah, okay. Well, normally I will do some contests, and I always send out signed copies at that point. But the other thing that I've done for people is, if you can't see me like at an event, you know, I'm going to be at Malice Domestic, which is a big cozy mystery conference in Bethesda, Maryland, in end of April, beginning of May. It's the first weekend in May. And there people can bring books and we sign them, and you can buy signed copies. But I also do use book plates, because a lot of people can't get to something, or they don't get to see you. And
like, it's so hard to try and get to those kind of places. I'm like, no one ever comes to Oklahoma.
I'm like, FYI, I live in DC, and I was just making a note, like, go get tickets.
Oh yeah, Malice Domestic. It's great. There's tons of cozy mystery writers there.
Yes, I know. I always stalk the Malice Domestic page, and I'm like, oh, if only.
But it is a great conference, and but I also people can contact me via my website. There's a contact page there on my website, and am happy to send out. You know, it's hard. It gets expensive to send out signed books, and since I'm working with a publisher, I'm not like selling them myself, so that makes it more difficult. But I'm happy to send signed book plates. That's not that difficult. So if somebody really wants some signed book plates, they can contact me either on Facebook or on my Facebook page, or on my website.
Fantastic.
Marie Gizmo, so cute. Thank you so much for spending time with us. I sincerely appreciate you answering my questions. Wishing you much success with your series. And then she's agreeing with you. She's saying you can never please everybody, and if you do it, it will just suck the fun out of anything and you enjoy. Everyone's agreeing with you and appreciating you.
Well, that's great, and I really appreciate this opportunity, and I love getting a chance to talk to readers, and it's difficult sometimes because, as you say, we're all spread out all over the place, and it's hard for people to, you know, I can't travel as much as I want either, and so.
And the cozy mystery world it's bigger than a whole bunch of people think, but it's like no one talks about it. I don't know how many times someone has messaged me, "What's a cozy mystery? What are you?" And my channel mostly revolves around cozy mysteries. Like that's my thing. And so I'm all about like trying to get as many people knowing about cozy mysteries and falling in love with them as I can.
Yeah. And that's very much appreciated. And I have been recommending your channels, both your channels. Because I said, if you like cozy mysteries, I'm on several Facebook cozy mystery groups, and I said, if you like cozy mysteries, you should be following these people. So
thank you so much. That's so sweet of you.
But, you know, it is good because it's very positive, and I think there's a lot of, you know, some negativity in the book world. And I think one thing about cozies is mostly positive. It's a positive sort of.
I mean, my biggest thing is it's mostly written by women, and so I love that fact, and I want to support that. Aside from romance, this is, you know, the biggest part that women are contributing to in the literary world. Is like, yes, I want to support that.
And I want people to realize that cozy mysteries are not only, I mean, yes, it is a majority a female written world, but also men write cozies, and that's okay. And there are male protagonists, and that's okay. And I had a whole entire video where I talked about diverse cozies, and so I talked about African American protagonists, gay protagonists. I talked about Jewish protagonists, and how what's so amazing about cozies is it's all encompassing, and it's just, my favorite word is it's a judgy free zone. Like in my life, everything is judgy free. Like you do you as long as you're not harming anyone else. And that's one of the things that I love about the cozy world. You can find anything within it.
Yes. And it's a safe place too, because you also know you're going to have the ending where the mystery is revealed in the end. You're not going to have to wait for the next book. You already know you're going to find out who the killer is or what the issue is, and you get to close the book and be happy.
And while I might push the envelope a little bit, I do like writing. I do not want to write real heavy violence or sexual scenes and things. I mean, personally, don't want to. I don't care that other people do. I mean, it's fine, and I might do them. But I like the fact that, you know, I can concentrate on writing the story and the relationships and the murder mystery, and not have to include that just to make it sellable.
Yeah, I totally agree. We've got one more question by Nikki. If you could time travel, where would you go?
Oh my goodness.
Hard-hitting questions here.
Yeah, I have to think about that because I love history. So it's really hard because, gosh, I love history so much. I think maybe I'd love to see, well, I have to think about being a woman and where would I want to be as a woman in history?
Can I be invisible and go to these different places? Because as a woman, if I go back in time, my role and the way that I would be perceived is totally different. And so that's what I start thinking about when someone asks me, because I've had students ask me those type of questions because I was a history teacher. They're like, where do you go? And I'm like, well, we got to lay some ground rules first.
Right. I think in that case, I'd like to go to the Renaissance because the birth of all that art and the brilliance of so many people in that time period. There were so many things created and developed in that time period. And I love art. I'm an art history. I have an art history minor and a theater major, and I love design. I love art. So to see that creation and see those people, and there were women artists then.
Yes.
I'd like to meet them.
I love that it was okay for women to be curvy during the Renaissance.
Like Amy. Amy's curvy.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. I did a whole entire video of my top 5 curvy cozy sleuths. And it's just, you know, because I'm a curvy girl. I'm not a tiny person. And so it's awesome to be able to read books where you can see them mirrored in you. And it's not someone who's a stick figure, and not judging stick figures. There are people who can't gain weight and who are naturally thin, but that's the thing that should be okay, is that it's okay if your sleuth is a size 14. It's okay if your sleuth is a size 4. Like, we shouldn't 100% focus on that, but it's okay to have differences.
Well, I did include Amy having some body issue concerns because I've always had those, because I was always a bigger person, and I'm tall and big boned, and so I was always taller than the guys in my class and all that stuff. And so that whole issue, and I brought that in with the dancers, and being around dance a lot, you see that unfortunate aspect of wanting a certain body type only. And so that's why I had Richard being somebody who was more open to
that whole experience of Richard. And then, like, I don't want to, if no one's read the first one, I don't want to ruin it, but that one, like, he was automatically my cozy male crush. Like, just for that. It was great.
And, you know, I think that's truth. And, you know, to assume that people, they say, oh, well, you know, my brother, for example, my older brother is a super athlete and, well, he's super to everything. But anyway, he was a super athlete and his wife is not. I mean, she's healthy and all that, but everybody, you know, thinks, well, if somebody's a really athletic person, they'll never like somebody who isn't, or, you know, that you can't have these mixtures of people that like different things. And I don't believe that. I think that it's more about the person and what you find in that person. And it's not about just looks or even things you like to do and that sort of thing.
I like that.
That's so sweet. I love everything you just said.
Yeah, so, you know, I've seen it in my life with a lot of people. And, you know, you go out into the real world, not Hollywood, not TV. You walk out in the real world and see couples and you see, you know, whether they're gay, straight, or whatever, but you see people together and you realize that there's a lot more going on than just looks or size or, you know, being the similar or something like that. So
I agree. You should just see the person as who they are, and my thing is always about their actions, other than what they look like, because you learn a lot of different things in life, and that you can't always just judge.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that I'm really devoted to in writing is writing. I know it's real popular right now to have anti-heroes, and I know they're interesting. But personally, I want my protagonist to be somebody that, even though they have flaws, that they really basically are trying to be a good person and have compassion and kindness. And you know, I'm not really interested in writing except as a villain or some side character or someone who is really, you know, despicable. The bad boys. I don't like the bad boys. I'm sorry, I just don't.
Nope. I won't put the book down if there's a bad boy. I'm like, I won't. I was never attracted to the bad boys. I'm engaged to the most amazing, sweet man in the whole entire world, and so I have never. Nope. Well, do you have anything else that you want to talk about, or go and pick up book 3, guys? It just came out yesterday.
Yesterday, yes. Yep, yesterday. And I have, where is it? There it is. There it is. It has a kitty on the front, too.
I saw that. I was like, oh my goodness. Has to be for murder. You get it? Because she's a librarian. You get it?
And I love, the covers are great. They do great covers. I mean, Crooked Man has...
The way you said that, do you get it?
That's my favorite thing about cozies are the freaking titles. Like, they slay me. If the title can get me, I don't even care what the synopsis says. I will grab it.
It's hard though, because there's a lot of library cozies out there. So my publisher's like, okay, what titles can we work with? And I'm like searching Amazon. That one's taken. That one's taken. That one's taken. But we eventually come up with it.
Yes, I love it. It's just, it makes my heart so happy. Like, I'll be in the Cozy Mystery aisle, and I'll go, and Aaron will go, oh, what's the title? And then I'm like, well, it's this, and he goes, oh, that's so good. Oh, that's so bad. That's so like, that means it's perfect. It's perfect.
Well, the new series, the first book is going to be called Booked for Death. And that's because not only is it a literary theme B&B, but you book yourself for holidays.
It has double meanings, and you're just like, oh, I just.
So I was really happy when I came on that one, but when I came up with that one.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Nikki says she lives for these titles.
There are some really cute ones out there too.
There really is. Like, I've got so many. If I'm ever having a bad day, I just go and look at my cozy shelf, and then I feel better.
I love some of the puns. I'm sort of stuck with this series. I have to bring in a library or book or something, you know. So it's a little more limiting. But some of them are really clever. I saw something recently that was really funny. But Now I can't remember it, of course.
And I love Meet Your Maker. It's like Meet Your Maker. Like I just die. Like a batter of life and death.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also like the covers. They tend to be very colorful and bright, and
Yeah.
they're really eye-catching. I like the Cozy Mystery covers.
I love the like they make you smile.
Yeah.
And Crooked Lane does really good covers. Their artists that they get are really good, and they really work with us too. So it's not just like, oh, here's your cover. Oh well. They'll send stuff, and we have input. So that's really
input in all of that, because I've heard from some authors that they're like, we send it out, and then they send us back what we get.
Yeah, no, they work with us. That's just really nice.
That is very.
Okay, that's not the typical response a lot of authors have.
Yeah.
They're really good to work with. So.
Like you chose well.
Yeah. So I guess I just want to thank everyone for being here, and the hosts for hosting. And I, like I said, maybe drop my website link in everything's on there if you need it, in terms of finding out. Like I have my links to my Twitter and my Facebook, and there's a contact page where people can send me email, and I do respond, and everything on there, like about the new books or what's happening.
You have a live stream when your first book of your next series comes out, and we can sort of do like a big, huge, like, hurrah.
Oh, that would be fun. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
I think that would be awesome. So, stay tuned for more Vicky on the channels, and in love with her books and her characters and all of that fun stuff. I know that I'm super, super excited.
Well, thank you again.
Yes, thank you so much.
It was a pleasure to talk to you. It was so nice to set this up and get your insights.
Yeah, and I'm always happy to come back, or maybe suggest other people who might want to.
Yes, I would love for you to tell all of your author friends about all the stuff that we do, because we love being able to bring authors onto here and get the real scoop and everything like that. It's a lot of fun to be able to do.
Yeah, and I think it's good for everyone, because you learn about authors, but also the authors connect more to the readers, and that really helps.
Exactly, and it just broadens the horizons for everyone, which is great.
Yeah.
Well, it's like meet the author of your favorite book. Like loving the book, like getting to meet the person who created your world. It's a very different experience.
I like low-key freaked out whenever you messaged me. I like screenshotted it to Angela, and I was like, oh my god, Angela, she messaged. And I was like,
well, see, but here's the funny part, though. Authors are the same way. It's like a reader messaged me. Oh, they like my book. Oh, so it's a symbiotic relationship.
Yes, it was fantastic. So we will see everybody later. Thank you all so much. Please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with everyone else who loves cozy, so that they can go and fall in love with Vicky's series as much as all of us have. Thank you so much, guys, for coming by.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for spending the night with us.
Goodbye. Thanks.